Morgan Stanley just fired 2,500 employees. That's roughly 3% of their staff, which in a vacuum doesn't sound like such a big deal, but we don't live in a vacuum here. Guys, if you've been following the channel, if you've been sub, you will realize that we've been covering dozens and dozens of companies that are terminating white-collar jobs. Heck, just the other day, we covered Amazon firing 30,000 corporate workers. All these companies are doing it right now. And there's three primary reasons why we're seeing this happen. The first of which is overhiring bloat. Overhired during COVID, now they need to close it down. AI and automation is absolutely something that's happening. Companies are saying, hey, how can we innovate? How can we do things better? Do we really need Martha from an HR, or can we use an AI bot to handle that? I mean, we're seeing companies lay off thousands of customer service roles. Again, if you've been subscribed to the channel, we've covered all sorts of different roles that are being laid off, and we're gonna cover a few of them later on in this video. And then the other reason that we're seeing this happen just over the past few weeks with companies like Oracle, for example, is companies are laying off employees to free up capital so they can build out more AI systems. They're basically banking on, well, in Oracle's case, if we can free up $10 billion by laying off 30,000 employees, well, we can invest that 10 billion into AI, and then, on the back end, we can hire people back if we need to, right? In fact, this is an interesting story because I know, some of the guys on the channel say, well, Mark, companies are, not really firing for AI. AI has no ROI. Guys, I just want to give you a stat here that I think is pretty interesting. And we covered this at length in a video just a few days ago. But in 2026, so far, 10% of all firings are attributed to AI. That means so far this year, of 1 out of 10 people that are fired are being fired, and the reason given is AI. I'll post a link to the entire video here, but what's really troubling about that number, fascinating, however you want to position it, is that number has increased dramatically over the last several years. It's basically doubling year over year. And the question that I'm asking is, where are we at in 2027? If in 2026 we're seeing 10% of layoffs attributed to AI, next year, is it gonna be 20%? And after that, is it gonna be 40%? I don't know. You tell me in the comments below. Now, I don't necessarily think it's gonna double year over year over year over year. Eventually that would have to slow, right? I don't know. Regardless, there are some things that we can do. And again, we'll cover that in a moment, because the reality is that, regardless of where you stand on this, everyone here, all channel fans, have to acknowledge that the world is changing. And understanding these trends, understanding what's happening in the market is really important to positioning yourself in this new world. On this channel, really want to help support men that want to remain relevant, respected, and financially free. Relevant, you need skills that keep you relevant. In order to be respected, you need to have relevancy. Your wife ain't gonna respect you if you lose your job. And financial freedom, well, you can't be financially free if you can't provide value to the workplace. So that's how we get there. Regardless, looking at this trend and looking at what we're seeing with Morgan Stanley is interesting because it's not necessarily about who is being fired, but it's who's not being fired and some of the unique characteristics of that role. And I'm gonna cover that here in just a moment, because again, if we're going to maintain jobs and maintain relevancy in the workplace, we need to make sure that we are on the lineup of people that are seen as valuable in this new workplace. So again, we'll get there in a moment. First, let's kind of talk about what's happening at Morgan Stanley. So long story short, 2025 was a fantastic year for Morgan Stanley. They're not one of these companies who are like, oh, we're in our death throes, we're in the death rattle of our business life cycle, and we just need to start laying people off so we look good for investors. No, they actually had a fantastic year. They hit an annual revenue record last year, and they even beat the Wall Street estimate for fourth quarter profits in January. So they're cranking. Morgan Stanley is cranking. They're just living their best life right now, right? So why fire a bunch of people when your business is cranking, when it's running smoothly? Like, what's the reason there? Well, Morgan Stanley says that the layoffs are due to, quote, shifting priorities and individual performance, which I could get behind. There's this belief in the business world that you need to fire, some percentage of your staff every year because there's a certain percentage of your staff that just stinks. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Ford. Rockefeller, one of those guys said, well, basically, you've got a standard deviation of your workforce. You've got 10% that are crushing it, 10% that are just terrible, and the rest are in the middle. So what he would do is just say, hey, we're just gonna gut the bottom 10% every year. So again, seeing these 2,500 layoffs is in line with that kind of theory. But it also looks like AI is playing a major role. Now, what's interesting here with Morgan Stanley is they don't even talk about AI in their recent press release, the announcements. They're not talking about AI, which is maybe strategic because I think that, a lot of people, like viewers on this channel, are very skeptical of AI. I definitely see this comment in the comments that say, hey, this company is firing people because of AI, let's boycott them. There is definitely a lot of negative connotation around AI. One of my favorite podcasts is the All In podcast, and one of the guys that is frequently on the show is David Sachs, the AI czar for the White House. And it's always interesting to me how he frames AI. He is just very adamant that AI is not leading to layoffs. Why? Because he doesn't want to create these barriers to AI implementation, right? Regardless, I believe that AI is absolutely impacting the workforce, and that's what this channel is all about. So anyway, here's a kind of an inside report that I got from the New York Post. New York Post reports, quote, sources at the firm say the cuts across the firm's investment banking and trading, wealth management, and investment management divisions are mostly about replacing back office workers in these areas with artificial intelligence bots. Let me repeat that last part here. Basically what they're saying here is that the firings are about replacing back-end workers with AI bots. Okay, and that's the key there, the back-end workers. And again, we're gonna cover that in a little bit more detail here in just a moment. But there's a lot of smoke that could lead to this idea, this fire. There's a lot of smoke for this fire. Morgan Stanley has already launched an AI program with ChatGPT. And a couple of years ago, this CEO, Ted Pick, predicted that AI tools will save their financial advisors 10 to 15 hours a week. And that was a couple of years ago. Let's just say that AI has come a long way since then. So let's get into it. And I think this is the important thing that guys like you and me need to be kind of thinking about. Who's impacted and who is safe? Who's got the tools that are actually gonna matter? Like what is something that you can walk, and that's what I try to do, guys. You walk away from these videos with something practical. It's not doom and gloom, it's realism. This is what's happening. What can I do? I don't want to just sit here and complain about how Elon Musk has too much money. Like, I don't care. What I care about is how can I put food on my family's plate? How can I make sure I'm investing wisely and I'm remaining relevant, respected, and financially free? So who's being terminated, who's safe? The job cuts do not impact the firm's financial advisors. Okay, so the financial advisors are not being cut. Probably there's a few that just are really bad at their jobs, or they're, having extra marital affairs with secretaries, or getting involved in too much drinking, or they're not showing up, or whatever reason. Sure, but it's not impacting financial advisors. The financial advisors, in baseball terms, safe. Rather, the support and administrative functions in the wealth management division are on the line. It's these support, it's the guys and girls in the admin and in the support roles that are being laid off. And by the way, you may have put this together, those are the same exact type of roles that AI is impacting. Did you kind of pick up what we're putting down there? We just covered what an insider told the New York Post. He said, guys, it's not the financial advisors, it's, people being replaced by these AI tools on the back end. That, is right in line what we're seeing from Morgan Stanley. And we can, again, there's a lot of smoke to this. We can increasingly see AI being used by banks for compliance, risk analysis, customer service, automations, research, report generation. Right now, guys, I'm seeing some really impressive stuff. If you are new to the channel, I'm in marketing. I do marketing for a few different companies, but most of my focus is on an Amazon SaaS company. Pretty cool. We brought it from 3 million annual recurring revenue, and we're very close to 4 million annual recurring revenue here over the last several months. So that's pretty exciting. Regardless, I'm in the process right now of using Claude Cowork to integrate in all the different parts of the tech stack. Specifically right now, I want to improve the data collection. I want to make sure I'm getting data from all these different reports, all these different platforms. Again, I'm a marketing director and we're doing marketing across 10 different channels. So I want to kind of bring all that data in, and I do a weekly report for the leadership team. And my plan right now is to get all those reports together. I don't want to spend, 3, 4, 5 hours a week doing this. I want to pull it all into Claude Cowork, generate a report, and then I can present it. And so essentially what I'd be doing there is saving what, 3 to 4 hours, saving 80% of my time. So anyway, that's the goal. Maybe I'll put a workshop on about how I do that once I'm confident enough in the process and it looks good and leadership is happy. But that's what I'm looking at. How can I use AI as a tool to improve my function? Because this is the key here, guys. It's who's not being laid off. The financial advisor. Why is that? It's because that financial advisor position is highly reliant on human relationships. It's about who you know. And someone on the channel over the weekend had just a really brilliant comment that said, guys, it's about who you know. It's about the relationships. You want to stay hired. You want to keep that client. It's who you know. It's who likes you. That is the crux of the situation. That is what matters. It's who you know. And in a job like financial advising, you're helping individuals, families, businesses manage their wealth. You're shaking hands. You probably know people's birthdays and their kids' birthdays and where they're going to school and, what sports they in. Did they win the championship? These are the types of things, people, there is something that really holds true. It's, people do business with people they like. And the reality is you're never really gonna like a robot, at least not in its current iteration. You're not gonna be like, I just love ChatGPT. It knows my name and I could never change. No, you're gonna go with whichever software gives you the best result. And the financial advisors are gonna be safe because they have the relationship, they're building their book of business, they played golf, they've gone to weddings, they're going to bat mitzvahs and so on and so forth. They're the ones that get there. And by the way, the other key factor here is the quality control and expertise, which is important. Quality control and expertise is really important. You can use AI to get a result, but how are you gonna know that it's the right result without an expert to understand what's going on in the back end? I'll give you a perfect example of this. My daughter's in softball and I had to buy her a bat. So we're at Dick's Sporting Goods and I go to ChatGPT and I start asking it all these details about, what type of bat is the right bat to choose. I don't know anything about softball bats. So I said, let's use ChatGPT. Well, used it, found a bat, bought it, got to softball. Halfway through the season, it turns out that the bat is about 2 to 3 inches too short for her. And so she's been trying out another teammate's bat, and she's just hitting the ball much better. So, long story short, the ChatGPT gave me pretty good information, but I needed to put it through the lens of an expert. And so again, that's where we come in. Develop relationships with customers, develop relationships with colleagues, okay? Use AI, put it through our lens, the lens of our expertise, to get the best result for clients. Because, listen, ChatGPT and AI LLMs are very, very replaceable. What's not replaceable is that relationship or the expertise that you've developed over the years. And, also worth noting is this particular role of a financial advisor, it's a blend of multiple roles: sales, financial planning, relationship management. And this is a role that isn't necessarily going to be replaced by AI, but augmented by AI. And so bringing this again around full circle, what we're seeing at Morgan Stanley is they're not firing the relationship guys, they're firing the support roles for those relationship guys. And I think that moving forward, what does the next year look like for me? Should the next year look like for you? It's relationships, relationships, relationships. I've said this a bunch of times before, I'll repeat again. Challenge: call someone today that you haven't spoken with in a while, but you respect, and just talk. You're not selling anything, you're just saying, what are you doing? Checking in, I respect you, I like what you do, you're forward thinking, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm thinking, bam, bam, bam. Those are really, you don't know when you're gonna need to cash in that relationship, but it matters. By the way, if you're like me and you forget things, just make a note of what's important to them. You know, you're talking to them, you're making notes. Oh, this person is, you know, their daughter's going through this, their wife's going through that. This is what he's thinking, you know, just jot notes. So then when you call them back in 6 months or 3 months, you can just check in. Oh, hey, what's going on with Cindy? How's Lewis? You know, what's going on here? You know, you can start to really fill that in. So relationships matter. Lean into that. Now is not the time to stop leaning into relationships. It's gonna matter. Relationships are gonna matter more than perhaps any time in history, A. And then B, start building out your tool set of AI employees. And again, this is kind of a shift that I've had over the last 6 months, is not thinking of AI as a tool, but thinking of AI as an assistant. AI as an employee of sorts. Sure, you're gonna have AI tools, but for me, I'm saying, how can I build out my own, you know, instead of, and by the way, all our loved ones in India, in the Philippines, this is a big, this is gonna be trouble. This is gonna be trouble for you guys, because I think that guys like me are gonna stop saying, okay, I need someone who can generate graphics and reports. Let me go to Fiverr. Let me go to my previous assistant in the Philippines for this project. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna say, how can I use Claude Cowork to handle this? How can I use Canva to do this? How can I get 80% of the way there? And once you start scaling that up across all the different platforms, it's really gonna change the way that the world operates. So anyway, long story short, Morgan Stanley firing a bunch of people, not firing the human-focused people. If you're face-to-face, you're human-focused, you're gonna be good. You're in a good position, let me say. And B, how can you use AI to supplement? Because the guys that have the human relationships and can use AI as a tool slash assistant slash employee are gonna be best positioned over this 2026 run. That's what I'm sticking to. Guys, thanks for watching the channel. Here's yesterday's video. I'll see you there. Peace.